I am 45 years old, have been married for almost 20 years, and live alone with my wife in a quiet house in an upscale neighborhood. We never had children, and the choice was mutual. A life together has always worked well for us. I am a businessman, very good at what I do, owner of a solid, well-structured company. My routine is organized. I take care of myself. I run 4 times a week, eat a balanced diet, and like to feel good about my body, firm, present. Overall, things in my life work the way I like them to, under control. But if there's one thing I don't understand, it's plumbing. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I can make important decisions, lead teams, negotiate large sums of money, but when there's a technical problem here at home, the most I can do is call someone. That's what happened that Tuesday. I was home alone when I noticed there was a problem with the plumbing in the kitchen. I couldn't tell what it was. I just knew something was wrong. I called a company that always serves our neighborhood and asked for help. "I need a plumber today, if possible," I said straight away. The attendant confirmed. "We have one available this morning. His name is Vtor. He's already on his way." I thanked her and went back to my office. I was still thinking about spreadsheets and reports when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and paused for a second. Vtor was standing there, with his toolbox in one hand and a steady, calm gaze, the kind that doesn't need to say much to be noticed. He must have been around 40, with a well-groomed beard beginning to reveal the first gray hairs, which only added to the mature charm of his face. His hair, cut very short, made the contours of his head even more pronounced, matching his discreet and masculine style. His strong arms were outlined under his tight-fitting t-shirt, which complemented his broad shoulders and defined chest. His slightly worn jeans naturally molded his muscular legs without exaggeration. Part of his face was hidden in the shadow of his cap, but it was still possible to see the firm, confident features of a man who carries the weight of his work and the kind of presence that effortlessly fills a room. He looked at me naturally. His voice was firm, deeper than I expected. "Good morning. Did you call me to look at a plumbing problem?" "Yes. Come in." I stepped aside and he entered, passing close enough for me to catch a faint scent of men's deodorant mixed with something more natural. A warm body, fresh from another job. I closed the door slowly, trying to stay focused, but I already sensed that this man was going to be working on more than just the pipes in the house. We walked to the kitchen in silence. I pointed to the sink with a discreet gesture, and he just nodded, without saying much. He put his toolbox on the floor and opened it calmly, revealing everything well organized, like someone who takes his craft seriously. He crouched in front of the sink, focused, looking for the source of the problem. His posture was firm and precise. His body moved with confidence, like someone who had done this hundreds of times before. The silence of the house seemed to amplify the small sounds, the metal of the tools clanging together, the slight creaking of the furniture, my own breathing. I stood near the door, watching. For some reason, I found myself noticing more than usual. The way he moved, the way he examined every detail, his exposed arms, his absolute focus on what he was doing. There was something about his presence that caught my attention, and maybe that was all it was. Or maybe not. "It seems like a simple thing," he said, still crouched down, without looking directly at me. "That's good," I replied, crossing my arms, trying to keep my tone light. For a moment, he turned his face slightly in my direction. Our eyes met briefly. There was something in that look, hard to explain. It was only a second, but it stayed with me. He lay down on the kitchen floor, sliding half his body under the sink, while the rest remained stretched out, exposed in front of me. His legs slightly apart, his feet firmly planted on the cold floor, his arms in constant motion as he searched for the source of the problem with the concentration of someone who knows exactly what he is doing. The position he was in itself, was already striking, but it was the whole picture that was unsettling in a new way. His silent focus, his practical dedication to the job, the soft sound of the tools, and the almost methodical rhythm of his breathing filled that space in a strangely hypnotic way. I settled into one of the nearby chairs, trying to occupy myself with my cell phone, reading and rereading notifications that didn't even make sense. I moved my hands without knowing exactly what to do with them, as if any distraction could help me regain control that I didn't even know I was losing. The truth is, I was nervous, and that, for me, was unusual. I had never felt anything like this in the presence of another man. It wasn't a clear or planned thought. It was a feeling that slowly invaded me, silent, almost inexplicable. A pleasant discomfort, a restlessness that mixed anxiety and curiosity, as if something were about to happen, even though nothing was actually happening. I watched the way he moved, the naturalness with which he occupied that space, without the slightest idea of the effect he was having. Or maybe he had some idea. It was hard to say. I just knew that there was something different about that moment, and that it affected me in a way I couldn't ignore. I turned my face away for a moment, closed my eyes briefly, and took a deep breath, trying to reorganize my thoughts. It was just a simple job, a plumbing problem, just another ordinary day. But for some reason, that day didn't seem ordinary. He finished what he needed to do in silence. He slowly pushed his body out of the sink and sat on the floor for a few seconds, breathing deeply, as if mentally checking that everything was in order. Then he stood up firmly, wiping his hands on a cloth and adjusting his t-shirt, which had risen slightly, revealing part of his abdomen marked by physical labor. As he put away some tools, he glanced quickly in my direction and noticed. He noticed that I was watching. Not blatantly, but with the kind of attention that reveals more than the gaze intends. I stood completely still for a moment, as if I had been caught red-handed, trying to hide the tension that had been overwhelming me since the beginning. He approached slowly, without saying anything at first, his expression calm but attentive. He stopped in front of me, his hands still slightly marked by work, and looked me in the eyes long enough to make my heart race. "Is everything okay?" he asked in a calm but firm tone, his deep voice sounding too close. My first reaction was automatic. Yes, everything's fine. But the answer came out too quickly, almost rehearsed, without any conviction. I felt it, and so did he. There was a second of silence between us, where only our breathing was present. And then, without further ado, without additional questions, he just leaned in, naturally, as if it were the simplest thing in the world, and he kissed me. A direct, firm kiss that came without warning, but met with no resistance. His mouth touched mine with a confidence that shook me to my core. For a moment, all the noise in the world disappeared. There were no more tools, no kitchen, no day of the week. There was only the touch of his lips on mine, and the silent surrender of my body, which responded before my mind could even react. I closed my eyes, not out of fear or guilt, but because of an impulse that came from somewhere else, a place that may have always existed within me, even if it had been dormant until then. And in that instant, something changed, and it didn't feel wrong. His kiss caught me completely off guard, but not in a sudden way, more like someone walking through a door that was already ajar, just waiting for someone to have the courage to push it open. His lips touched mine firmly, but without haste. There was a confidence in the gesture that immediately disarmed me. The closeness of his body, the warm smell of dry sweat and deodorant, the light touch of his hands resting on the side of my chair. Everything happened in a restrained way, but charged with a silent intensity. And I didn't pull away. I couldn't. The truth is, I liked it. I liked the warmth, the touch, the way his mouth fit into mine without hesitation. It wasn't a hurried kiss, nor was it forced. It was full of intention, yet still respectful. He gave me time, space, but also presence. I felt my body react before any logical thought could reach me. My heart raced, my hands trembled slightly on my thighs, and for a brief moment, I closed my eyes, not out of fear but to feel it better, so as not to escape anything. The kiss lasted a few seconds longer than it perhaps should have. But, honestly, I didn't want it to stop. It was strange, yes. New, unexpected territory. But there was something in me that recognized that moment, as if a dormant side of me had found its voice there, in the middle of the kitchen, in the middle of the routine, in the middle of a life that had always been too predictable. When he pulled away, he said nothing. Neither did I. We stared at each other in silence, as if that gesture said everything that our mouths still didn't know how to explain. And inside me, something had changed. After that day, something inside me lit up in a way I couldn't ignore, as if a dormant part one I may never have really known had awakened unexpectedly, but powerfully. It wasn't a sudden change or a break with everything I was, but rather a silent detour, almost imperceptible to the eyes of others, although inside me everything seemed to have shifted. The kiss we shared there in the kitchen was not just an isolated gesture. It was the spark of a new restlessness, a kind of quiet euphoria that accompanied me in the days that followed like a constant presence. I found myself remembering the details, the approach, the touch, the brief warmth of his lips on mine with almost involuntary frequency. And the most curious thing is that, even though I tried to rationalize what had happened, I found no guilt or regret, only a strange, intense, and silent desire to relive it. It was as if the simple fact of having felt that desire took me back in time to a youth that I might have skipped or ignored or stifled by conventions that no longer made much sense. I felt awake, present, alive, like a teenager discovering a new form of desire, but with the body and mind of a man who has lived long enough to recognize when something real begins to emerge, even if it is confusing, even if it is still nameless. For a whole week, I was reluctant to look for him, even though his number was saved on my cell phone, like a discreet temptation that accompanied me with every notification. I would open the messaging app, write the beginning of a sentence, delete it, close the screen, take a deep breath, and try to occupy myself with something else. But the urge didn't go away. It just matured. It was on an ordinary night. One of those nights when the house seems quieter than usual, and wine helps to loosen up your thoughts a little, that I finally plucked up the courage. My wife was already asleep. The living room light was still on, and I, with my cell phone in my hands, typed the message almost without thinking, like someone crossing a border that I knew I could no longer avoid. "Vtor, how are you? It's Thomas. I miss you. Shall we arrange something?" The message was sent with a slight tightness in my chest, the kind of nervousness I hadn't felt in a long time, a bittersweet mixture of anxiety and expectation of being seen, answered, desired back. I closed my phone and went out to the balcony, as if the night air could calm me down, but it wasn't long before the device vibrated discreetly in my pants pocket. "Hi, long time no see. I thought you weren't going to text me. Let's do it. I want to see you too." I read those words with bated breath, as if my whole body reacted to those short lines with unexpected intensity. An almost involuntary smile escaped my lips, restrained but sincere, as if I were admitting to myself for the first time that this wasn't just an impulse or a passing fantasy. It was real. It was mine. And I wanted more. And maybe, deep down, I already knew there was no turning back. But for the first time in a long time, that idea didn't scare me. On the contrary, it did me good. We made plans directly, almost as if it were something simple, but inside I was a whirlwind of anxiety, desire, and a certain calm that, curiously, came from the certainty that I was doing what I wanted, even if I couldn't quite explain why. We agreed to meet at a discreet gas station, away from downtown, in an area with enough traffic not to attract attention, but quiet enough for the moment to happen without haste. I arrived a little before the agreed time. I parked and turned off the engine, watching the light flow of cars coming and going on the road. The afternoon light was strong, golden, shining through the windshield and warming the interior of the car, making the atmosphere more intimate, even before any contact had taken place. Minutes later, I saw his truck approaching. It was dark, with visible signs of use, as if it had come straight from a day's work. Vtor parked next to me and got out with his usual calm and steady manner. He was wearing a dark, tight-fitting t-shirt and worn jeans, and one glance was enough for the tension between us to return, with the same force as the first time. He locked his vehicle and walked over to my car naturally. When he opened the passenger door, he greeted me with a brief, direct smile and sat down next to me, as if he already knew that place, that atmosphere, that silence. "Shall we go?" he asked, his voice low, casual, almost intimate. "Let's go," I replied, trying to sound as calm as he did. The drive to the motel was made in the warm silence of the afternoon. The sun was still high, tinging the city with warm golden tones, creating soft reflections on the car's dashboard. Between us, there was no rush, no forced words, just presence, and the silence between two men who knew exactly what they were about to experience without needing to say much. At every traffic light, every turn, I felt the tension growing. The afternoon heat, mixed with the heat of his body so close to me, created a dense atmosphere, charged with restrained desire and thoughts that crossed my mind without warning. From time to time, I glanced over and found his gaze there, steady, present, as if he already knew what was coming next. We arrived at the motel. I checked in quickly, and we went straight up to the room. The afternoon sunlight invaded the space through the cracks in the curtains, partially illuminating the room with that soft golden tone that made everything more real, more raw, more beautiful. As soon as the door closed behind us, Vtor approached me. There were no questions, no hesitation, just a firm, direct gesture as he slowly pulled me into a full, deep embrace in which my whole body fit naturally. I smelled him again, a mixture of woody deodorant, warm skin, and something that was uniquely his, unmistakable. I closed my eyes for a moment, as if that hug could silence everything that had been screaming inside me since the last time we saw each other. The truth is that seeing him again was more than good, it was necessary. Being with him there, feeling his body pressed against mine, the afternoon heat coming in through the window and mixing with the warmth of his touch, brought me a sense of presence, of truth, that I hadn't felt in a long time. The kiss came naturally, as a continuation of the hug, and that first contact of our lips was enough for me to understand that none of this was fleeting. It was real, and my body knew it even before my mind fully accepted it. After that day, something in us changed. It wasn't just about the touch, the body, the intense moment we experienced in that room lit by the warm afternoon light. It wasn't just desire, nor curiosity. What happened between us was deeper, quieter, more real. We left the motel in silence, each with our own turmoil inside. Vtor left his hand on my thigh for a few minutes on the way back, without saying anything, and that simple, firm gesture, full of presence, said more than any words could. When we stopped at the gas station where he had left his truck, he looked at me before getting out. It wasn't a look of doubt. It was a look that asked if I was feeling what he was feeling. And I was. At that moment, I knew. It was more than skin. It was more than a secret encounter. It was something that couldn't be easily explained, but that was clearly felt. In the days that followed, we continued to talk, exchange messages, and meet when we could. But more than the time we spent together, it was what remained afterwards, that feeling of completeness, lightness, belonging. There was a kind of comfortable silence between us, a mutual understanding, as if our souls recognized each other on a plane where the body was just the gateway. Vtor gradually became a reflection of me, but not a mirror that simply repeated. He revealed me. He showed me parts of myself that I didn't know existed, and he did so with a firm kindness, with a constant presence, without forcing, without demanding, just by being there. And I, who always had everything under control, realized that with him I could simply let myself be. What was born between us didn't need labels or justifications. It was feeling. It was care. It was desire with tenderness, discovery with truth. It was love or something very close to it. And even if the world outside didn't understand, we knew. It was mutual. And it was beautiful. And in the end, that's what mattered. If this story spoke to you, if it touched a part of you that you didn't even know still existed, subscribe to the channel. Everything here is real. Feeling, skin, soul. Stories that aren't ashamed to show what we feel and what we desire too. If you want more moments like this, more stories that warm, that provoke, that embrace, come with me, subscribe, and stay.